Yeah, last meeting, this was not, the voice was not streaming.
So, okay, are we ready to go, Corey? All right, then we will call this meeting to order, and I would ask that Murph lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, are there any no, we're not singing. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda?
That's singing.
No, we're not singing. Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So
Move to
made.
approve the agenda.
Second.
And seconded by Jan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, moving on. We just do a final discussion regarding the taxes and fees. We talked about this in our last meeting. And we'd like to finish that up if we could, to make at least a recommendation. We have no call on this, I understand. And as a group representing our business constituents is why we're addressing this issue. So, would anyone like to take the floor on that? Al, you started this, would you like to say something, and then Tanner, if you would follow up on that?
I guess at the direction of the board, on which of the three, or if all three, are desirous of pushing this forward, that perhaps we develop a resolution to bring this topic to city council for their further study and potential implementations of something.
Okay. Tanner, would you like to take hold of any of that and move forward?
I concur.
Okay,
I had on my note, perhaps a resolution or determining and stating an opinion or position on the issues with a recommendation to council.
now, to make that recommendation and to come up with that, can we do that in this session? Are we gonna need a special meeting for that? Of course, open to the public, like a workshop or whatever, to maybe work with the city to do that? What are your feelings, board? Speak. Yes.
It's city council, through approval of our foundation plan, has directed us as this body to try and improve the health and welfare and prosperity of the district. There are not many things, or perhaps, let me say, there are at least a couple of things that I see on this list, like the sales tax vendor's fee and the business license fee, that directly affect the health and prosperity of a business district to some degree, and are directly within the control of the city government. So, in pursuit of a healthier and more prosperous business district, it seems logical to me that these items be addressed. I would propose that our position as a board is that it would be positive for our district. It would benefit the downtown district to reinstate the sales tax vendor fee and eliminate the business license fee. Is that?
Al?
Mary Jo, would it be out of line if I brought forward, with the approval of the board, that maybe Tanner and I get together and do some wordsmithing and come up with a resolution that would be comfortable, and then present this back to the board at the next meeting?
I think that sounds like a good idea, because
And
we're
I
kind of,
drafted you, and I'm not sure.
I'm, like, what, we know what we'd like to see, we
Yeah.
know that that the city has things that they have to do in order to run the city properly, we know
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
And we need to take all that into consideration, we are representing our constituents, and, I think that would be a logical thing, and then we'll have something to look at and
Yeah.
discuss.
Yeah,
Ellen?
On the flip side of the coin, of course, our city government is trying to look after our merchant welfare as well. It's just the monies go into their pot, and then they take care supposedly of us, as opposed to the vendors keeping that money.
No,
No, you got a comment on this?
The business license fee, I'm unclear how $50 a year is gonna help a business. If a business is determined whether they're gonna succeed or fail based on $50, they probably shouldn't be in business.
what happens with the $50? What does?
It
what
goes
does
to
a business-
administrative costs to put together that license, do the checking on the state. There's some administrative. I know, cause I just got a business license for my wife, so, you know, I know the processing there. But $50, now the vendor fees, I looked into that a little bit. I'm still researching it, and I do know that back in 1996, that's when vendor fees were created to, give the businesses, because they're doing all the administrative work for the sales tax, it gave them a break because they were doing all the work, and then over time, it went down to 1%, and then I think 98, it went down to 0. That's my research so far. I'm still on the fence with the vendor fees, so, I don't have an opinion yet. Lodging tax, that tax actually goes to visitors, it doesn't go to us, so, but yes, the lodging tax should go to bettering our downtown, I mean, that was what it was created for.
Let me ask you, excuse me.
Sure.
Jan?
I wanna ask you about the business license. I mean, you pay the $50, there's a little piece of paper, about half this size,
Yes.
that gets spit out of the computer with your name and
Right,
address
but
on it.
Jennifer has to do a little research and put in all the information and do some background checks, so there
Okay,
is some
can I go to the
administrative costs.
Can I go to the city?
Yes.
And ask for a list of businesses that are in town based on that information? No.
I don't know that, that's
I
not
think
my.
you can.
I've been told, you know, and maybe things have changed, but I have been told, well, we don't have a complete list of everything. And I've never pursued that.
My concern
any
is
further.
that $50 a year, if your business is struggling and $50 a year is gonna keep it afloat, you truly should not be in business,
Okay, but it's not that, it's add that $50 up,
right?
okay?
Well, and that's some of the
And,
discussion.
you-
I'm
That-
not
I'm just
against the
asking
vendor
questions.
fees, and I'm not against the lodging tax, I'm just saying the business license fee, I mean, if it went down to $25, my point is $50, a business is gonna struggle with $50, then it should not be in business, that's all.
I think it's a
Just-
validation.
Okay, and,
Yeah.
and all this is good, Darren did ask if he could make a comment on this. Darren, would you like to say?
You did ask me to do some research on this last.
Yes,
week,
yes.
so coming out of left field on this. You there? Working? Did you turn these on at all?
I've not done anything with those, but they should just turn on when you,
Doesn't look like it. Okay. These are connected, but, so, couple things, I guess I'll talk about, do the business licensing fee first. So, I did the research for the state, and as you know, the state actually, so we're a self-collecting city. We're one of, I think, approximately 100 or so in the state that self-collect, because we're home rule municipalities. The state has its own, so the state has, its own, they do things a little bit different. The city does not collect on nonprofits, a fee for nonprofits. That's where we've kind of hedged our efforts towards businesses, and so, and a lot of cities do that. A lot of cities don't charge nonprofits a fee for but they come in and they have to get their license to conduct business within the city if they do it more than twice a year. And then so the state charges a $66 fee. $50 of that is a deposit. So if
there's a discussion right now in the state, because this goes to both the vendor fee and the sales tax, is to simplify the remittance of sales tax across the state, because it is complicated. We have a lot of special districts, and we have a lot of different taxing authorities like the UPass, ambulance district, or health services district, school district. There's actually DDA resides in 6 different taxing authorities. The city is only 1/3 of those taxing authorities in terms of sales tax, and 1/5 of that for the property tax side. But, so if you look at the state, it's about $66. The good thing about the state is that they provide, $50 deposit goes towards the first remittance of your sales tax in the state. If you look across the state for those 100 taxing authorities, the city is slightly high. I mean, I will admit that the state, average for home rule municipalities is $35.36, for a business license. So we're at 50, but what I will say, that's at the lowest level. So what most cities have done, outside of the flat fee, is that they've done a graduated, business license. So like the Walmarts of the world would pay a higher amount based on the number of employees that they have within their business. So a town like ours, where the small businesses are impacted by this, you could reduce the business license to a lower rate and kind of do a graduate. It's a possible policy recommendation to city council. There's also the possibility of just keeping it flat and do an incremental reduction over the next 2 years to get it down to about $35, to get us just below the state average. I mean, I think that's another recommendation that could happen as well. So things that we could all discuss with city council in a work session. Going to the vendor fee. So that the vendor fee is generally, it was created, many years ago, back when businesses hand wrote out and did their remittance by hand. And over time, point of sale systems have increased the technology, and and there's been less of an impact on businesses. That's why in many areas the vendor fee has gone away. So in general, it's in what the vendor fee is. It's really a credit from the 100% of tax owed by that business. It's not like an extra. It's just so that everyone's clear. It's not like an extra fee that goes on. It's a credit that the city would give and has given in past years to businesses for doing that remittance, what it was. But over time, businesses have actually had to do less because of that. As we get into the current system, though, as I said, as these special districts and all these other taxing authorities have been created, it has become more complicated. So it's kind of had like this. It was a lot of effort by businesses, and it went down because of point of sale. Now, as we're seeing more of these, I think it's ramping up a little bit. But there's been studies that have been done on what the total impact is, and it's far less than 3.3%. For small businesses in 2006, a study that was done in Colorado showed that there was a 0.82% impact to local businesses, small businesses, and a 0.13% for the larger retailers like Walmart. So there could be a discussion that it could be reinstituted. The state recently went to a cap. They increased it to 4%, but they put a cap on it. And most cities in the state have gone to where you would get a % back, but you'd be capped at a certain amount each month. So lots of different policy recommendations. The big issue right now with the vendor fee and sales tax within the business licensing fee is that the state is right now, because of Wayfair, is doing an analysis to put all of the taxing authorities, they're all coordinating together to come up with a common remittance system. So the intent is to make it simpler for businesses to remit their taxes, and that would actually have a significant impact on whether a vendor fee would even be necessary, because it removes a lot of the complication of the taxing, the tax remittance for all those businesses. So that's actually in the process right now. The state has put legislation forward because of Wayfair and the difficulties that have occurred as a result of that SCOTUS decision.
Okay, so if I come up with a system that makes it easier for me to collect the tax, and I don't have to do the work. I had a point of sale system, which I'm not computer literate, so I still did the, writing out. What difference does that make to you, how I figure that? I still have to collect that tax,
Well, it's not.
and I still have to give that to you.
True.
How I arrive at it,
It's a credit.
that's my business. If I can make it easier for myself, great,
Well, but should the yeah, exactly. I think the issue is that its intent was. Its intent was to credit, it was a benefit, not an entitlement to businesses that would, to credit them for their efforts. And over time, it has become less because of technology but then I think it's slightly ramped up. That's my own personal opinion in terms of how much effort is taken for businesses. I think it has increased because there's more taxing authorities in Colorado than most any other state. There was a parody that was done about the state of Colorado and all the special districts in the state, because there's so many of them.
How about the county? We have to pay the county because they collect those taxes, and I can guarantee you that all those people that work for the county are not doing that by pen and paper.
Well, this brings up the biggest point that I would want to make is that, again, I go back to the point I made, and Jerry, if you have a question, I'll answer in a second. Is that we're only 1/3 of your sales tax, we're only 1/5 of your property tax. I think the best decision, and to have a more of a holistic impact on the business environment, is to get all the taxing authorities together and have a discussion about this, a work session, and see what we all can do collectively, so that, because we're all kind of facing the same issues, like the revenues for the city. Here's a good statistic. Revenues for all the businesses, it went from 6.46, I think, to 3.24. So over the last 2 years, all of the revenues have they're still increasing, but they're increasing at a lower rate. So everybody's being impacted within the city by a bunch of different things: labor, healthcare costs, other inflationary impacts to your fixed costs as a business. And so your revenues are starting to slow, and that also has an impact on the city. So if you look at all the taxing authorities, there's maybe a way that we all can have, like for the city, could maybe incrementally reduce the business licensing fee over the next year. There's a possibility we could look at a small reduction in the mill levy. There's things that we can possibly do that as a city could have an impact. But if we talk to all the taxing authorities, maybe there's something else to have more of a meaningful impact to the business environment. So that would be need to get all of those taxing authorities together to have those discussions.
Okay. Tanner?
I have just one question for Darren and then some comments, if that's okay.
Okay.
Hey Darren, you mentioned some studies that, one of which shows the impact to businesses is actually 0.8% or something like that. 0.82. Can you tell me any more about the studies? Whose studies are those? Where was we
So
finding
Price Waterhouse is a 2006 study. This study was most recently used by the state legislature when they were addressing the state vendor fee. It was, I believe it was quoted by the chamber that you talked about. It might have been quoted by them as well, but that's the most recent study that's been done. It's outdated, and I think there probably needs to be another one that's done. But the vendor fee was created long before that, and so technology has ramped up over time, and it's possibly less.
Was there any other study, or was that the one you were?
That's the primary
you're
one for
referring to?
and the Bell Policy Center for the state of Colorado addresses the entire issue and talks about the impact and the national situation that addresses vendor fees nationwide.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. One of the things I think, a couple of things to address. First, the common remittance system. Right now, regarding sales tax collections and remittance, all other taxing entities that we're subject to are on a common remittance system. That's already the case, with only one exception, and that is the city of Woodland Park. They have their own collection system that we have to log into and pay separately from the others. The cost to a business for collecting and remitting sales tax is not only in the administrative effort that must go into it, which you've, just mentioned, used to be more arduous and time consuming because it was all done by paper. The math had to be done manually back before calculators, and all the accounting was done manually, and that was a much more difficult process than it is now with technology and point of sale systems. However, one thing that's changed that has not been discussed yet here and is a significant cost to us, and I would argue is the bulk of the cost in that the vendor fee is intended to reimburse, is credit card processing fees, merchant fees. So here's an example. When I sell furniture and someone pays me with a credit card, if there's, for example, $1,000 worth of tax applied to the transaction, the consumer is charged $1,000. That $1,000 is added to the merchandise total and charged to the consumer, and they pay it. But what is then deposited into the business account is perhaps $970. It is not $1,000. The business does not collect $1,000, even though the consumer paid it. We lose 3% right off the top. The other taxing entities recognize this cost as the cost of doing business on their behalf and allow the vendor, the business, to keep that 3% or not to pay it because we didn't collect it in the first place. The city does not do that any longer. It was 1996 when the rate was reduced to 0. So although someone pays $1,000 in taxes in a business in Woodland Park, the business only receives $970, the city says, pay us $1,000. We know you only got $970, pay us $1,000. So that 3% comes out of the business's funds. It's not money that was collected in tax. It's the business's money. And I would argue that's really the largest part of the cost at this point in collecting and remitting tax. So,
Okay.
we may be getting outside of what the DDA's purview is with regard to this discussion. I mean, the idea of gathering all the taxing entities together and talking about what's in their interest or how they can go about addressing this probably isn't our role. Our role in any of our documents, okay, that tell us how to operate, like our bylaws and our foundation plan and the statutes, nowhere does it say that we're charged with making sure the city government has enough money to operate. It doesn't say we're supposed to go make sure the school district has plenty of money. It says we are supposed to make sure the downtown district is healthy and prosperous, with additional benefits from that goal being tax revenues to other entities. If the downtown district thrives, the city will thrive. Fire district, ambulance district, school district all thrive as a result of a thriving community, and that's our aim. So with that said, I can't see any reason not to recognize that reinstating the vendor fee is positive for the district. It's not something we can do, it's not our decision, it's council's. They can have all these other discussions. They'll ask for reports from their staff and weigh everything and come to hopefully the right decision. With our limited purview, what is the right position on the issue? And I would suggest that it is in the downtown district's interest for that vendor fee to be reinstated.
In all due respect, you are a component of the city government, so you are the city, and so you're making recommendations to the city. All I'm asking for is to have a more holistic discussion. You are the government, and so having a discussion about this with all of the other taxing authorities would be a combined effort, because you are really kind of in many ways our advisors on the local businesses. So you would served with us in having those discussions with all the other taxing authorities. Let me say, the comment that you made, state business, when the vendor fee was created, credit cards were not part of that discussion. That's
Right.
something that you've made a good argument, I think, but the introduction of the vendor fee never considered, credit card, fees as part of that discussion, so.
Not originally, but those
Yeah.
discussions have been ongoing, and why has the state not abolished or reduced the fee? Why, when having these conversations over recent years, have all other taxing entities we're subject to not reduce that fee? If, in fact, the cost is lower to businesses now, why haven't they made a change?
It's a lobby, it's because of lobbies. And
Ah.
the chamber, no, it's true, it is.
Well,
The chamber has
then-
lobbied the state legislature to ensure that it remains, but it did get a cap this year, so that there has been impact to it. And it did go away at points in our history. It has been zero at points in the state in our history, when this was a significant impact to, when this was could have been a significant revenue to the businesses. So, to say that, I mean, it has not been it's been a benefit, not an entitlement over the last 40 years.
All these boards and commissions are lobbied constantly on every issue. We still come to the right decision. And despite the lobbying, the state, the county, the ambulance district, they have not changed their practice, regardless of who's lobbying them. Governments are lobbying for money, right? Chamber is saying, no, we want this vendor fee in place. And what has the decision been by every other entity except for the city? To recognize that sales tax vendor fee is right. It's the right thing to do, and that's why it's in place.
Okay, well, I can see these discussions need to continue. Murphy's got a question, and then we'll go on to the lodging tax, and then we'll move on to the next
Actually, I
one.
have a statement, and this is where the $50 comes in, Noel. So, I pay $50 for a license to do business, for permission to collect tax and drive industry. And I get my tax license, which is another fee. And then I get my liquor license, which is another fee. And then I get my state and city liquor license, which is another fee. And then I begin collecting taxes, and I pay roughly 2.8 to 3% out of my business on the taxes that are collected for the city by credit card, and the state and the county and everybody. Oh, that's right. I also have to pay 7.5% out of my business because I am a hospitality industry where people come in and tip my employees, at least the wait staff, and I am by law required to pay that 2.8 to 3% on the credit cards on their tips, me, out of my business. My servers did over $120,000 in gratuities last year. I paid not just the 3%, 2.8 to 3%. I also paid 7.5% out of my business on FICA, on those tips, which did nothing for my business, other than tell me my business is doing great because my servers are earning really big tips. Now start adding all those up, that $50, that $100, that $12,000 I paid on FICA and everything. You start adding all that up, and that's the reason why a business that did over $800,000, and I run a tight ship and keep a very tight eye on things because I really have to. 2.8% profit. 2.8% profit. Now, I got it. I chose to go into that business. Hospitality is one of the hardest to survive in. But here's the other thing. I cannot, by law, only taxing entities, counties, city offices, and all those, can charge back that 3.5% to, if I walk in and say, I want my driver's license, or I want my tags down here, they can charge me 3.5% back, or 3%, or whatever that fee is. I have no recourse. I am restricted by law from collecting that from the employee, from the customer, from anybody. No surcharging allowed. And you start adding that $50 with the $2,000 I paid the city, and you start adding it all up, and it becomes quite the burdensome item overall.
Point taken. Tanner?
That's a really good point, is it is prohibited by state law for businesses to charge an extra 3% to those who pay with a credit card. We can't say, oh, you're paying all these taxes with your credit card, well, we need to charge you extra. It's illegal. And yet, the government does. So if I were to remit the taxes to the city with a credit card, they charge an extra fee because of the credit card fees.
That's right.
Good
When the
point.
county collects the property taxes and pays them out to the various authorities, guess what they do? They keep a fee. And it's not because of credit cards. You don't pay your property tax with a credit card. They keep 3%, a flat 3% as a fee for the administrative effort of collecting and paying the money. When the city collects the sales tax for the school district and pays the school district, the city retains a fee for managing that money. That is the vendor fee.
Well, I can see where there needs to be some joint conversation about this. Kelly, one more thing, and then Darren will move on.
Thank you, Madam Chair, I
Sure.
appreciate the time. I just wanted to just point out a couple of things. We're talking about costs that all businesses incur. It's a cost of doing business, all of the different fees, the FICA tax, all of those fees that are imposed. Most of those that we're talking about, the city has no control over. If we're interested in talking to the city council about helping out with some different things that you've pointed out, and have made good arguments for it, by the way, I would suggest that that's what we should consider, and the other things associated with the state and federal levels should be taken up at that level. We really have no control over that, and those are things, I incur a lot of those costs myself as a business. I'm not in the hospitality business, and I feel your pain, Murphy. But those are things that are outside of our control and our purview. So I sympathize with you, I understand. But I would just say that really those are things outside of our control. And so I hear your plea, I hear your arguments, and as I said, I think you've got some good points, and I'm sure the city council will be open to consider those things. Thank you.
Can I ask this? Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Can I ask that, Al and Tanner have offered to come up with some kind of it. Can I ask that you take that position to have conversations with Darren, council if necessary? At least, one or two sit-down meetings with them to talk about that, and then bring us back something as a proposal that might work? Would that work for you, Darren, to have those conversations with these two so that we can come up with something that we can recommend and maybe get some voices behind and maybe make a statement even to state level if we come up with something that's good enough? I don't know where this is going, but I can see that there needs to be conversation about it. And I think lack of communication doesn't get anybody anywhere. I think if we sit and talk about this, that we could come up with something that might help all of us. Darren?
I'm happy to. I think, again, I go to the point that there's other reasons why I think it's important to bring in the other taxing authorities. The reinstatement of a vendor fee would have about a $70,000 impact on the school district's reduction in their revenues as well. So that you need to figure out how to bring this into kind of a more holistic discussion on the issue, because they actually remit, the sales tax is actually remitted through the city. And so the institution of a vendor fee would likely have an impact, on their revenues as well. It would have to be passed on, because we'd be able to differentiate between the two. It would be discussion with them. So, because only 1/3 of your sales tax comes through the city. The other 2/3 comes through all the other local taxing authorities that are here and the state. But absolutely, I think, and I've already made a couple recommendations. I think whether it's your purview to have a concern about how these reductions impact the ability for the city to provide essential services to the community, it should be part of the discussion. And that's why my thought is that if we do these, that could be an incremental decreases or it could be instituted over a few years things that the city does that I would say for the businesses that are kind of outside of the norm. Some of the businesses in here receive a tax waiver for their parking lots. And they don't have to plow the parking lots. The city does that above and beyond what the city has to do. And Murph, you're one of those. I think, Mary Jo, you're actually another one of those businesses that receives that benefit from the city. And that's discretionary on the city's part. And so there's things that we may not be able to provide those services if those revenues are dropped too precipitously, they're too quickly. And I think it's important that the businesses understand that. I don't think most businesses even know that we've done that over the last 10 years, that even has been a benefit that most businesses receive
Yeah.
from us.
Oh,
We do
I
that.
have,
We-
I have that lease with the
Okay.
parking
Yeah.
lot, and I'm very well aware of that benefit.
Yeah.
And Tanner, and then we've got
So,
10 minutes
a
for the
really
move
good
on.
point. Darren just made a really good point about the essential services should be part of the discussion, and so for part of the discussion, it needs to be known by everyone that sales tax vendor's fee, when eliminated by the city council, voted on in 1994, in the minutes for that meeting, there's some discussion about it, and in the ordinance that was voted on by the council and approved, those funds are restricted. They are not general fund revenues, as was stated here at our last meeting. They are not for essential services. They are prohibited by city ordinance from being used for essential services or other things, anything other than projects in the downtown. That is what this money's supposed to be used for, but that was forgotten long ago. That hasn't been the recurring practice. I would bet if we asked any council member whether staff have advised them of that limitation on the funds, none of the council would recall such advisement. And that's
Here's your answer.
part of what happens with these things. So, anyway.
Well, that needs to come up in the discussions then, and
If I
get
can,
it
I
all
think
going.
that's a good
And
point. It just, because the staff, it has, I mean, they're at those, for instance, the city, it is general fund revenue, by the way, it's earmarked within the general fund, so that wasn't a correct statement, but it's earmarked revenues. Really, in my opinion, the city should have eliminated that that out of the ordinance, when we created a tax for lodging, because it's duplicative in nature. And also, there's a big problem with the fact that it is restricted to the downtown area, because you're getting most of those revenues from businesses outside of the downtown area, Walmart, Safeway, and other businesses. So it's not a fair distribution of those revenues. Lastly, as I've had discussions with former city staff, a lot of those revenues, and we're still collecting, we've committed a lot of those downtown project revenues to the city streetscape projects, which have covered those over the last decade. We're still catching up with that. So I would say those revenues have been dedicated to downtown projects, and it's been effective. All those streetscapes in the middle of the road are a result of those funds. And so, yes, they were used for downtown projects, but I do believe it's duplicative in nature and likely should be removed.
yeah, well, I can see where we need to move on to the next, and I can see where this needs to go on. So once again, Tanner and Al, if you would get with Darren and set up some times that you guys can talk about this, to come up with some kind of a recommendation. This is gonna be ongoing. We
Yeah.
started early so that we would have something by the time next year's budget comes.
With regards to
Al.
that and what Tanner and I'll be working on, it's certainly my opinion right now that we would be a witness to this process, because we have no authority at all to modify any of the taxing or fee structures of the city.
This is a
of Oak Park.
recommendation,
Yeah, only a recommendation. We would be a witness, yeah.
okay?
Yeah, and there's many other points that could be brought up, but means that you wish to move on, yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, this is gonna be ongoing.
Yeah.
Kurt, we really need, you have got 2 minutes, that's it, go ahead. Kurt? Well, I said we're gonna wait till quarter after. It's there. If you want to make comment in 2 minutes, please do. Because we need to get on with the rest of the agenda.
Yeah, I just have a couple of things. As you know, I spend a lot of time and money and effort on working on the principles of good governance and teaching the principles of good governance and writing books about the principles of good governance. And I want to make a couple of comments here. What I see here is going on is a debate about can the business people afford this versus what's right. For example, is it right for the taxing authority to require you to spend a bunch of your money and take it out of your family's income, or take it out of your ability to pay for your kids' education and not reimburse you for it? Where else that's called an unfunded mandate in the rest of the world, and it is patented. Un-American, yeah, we get away with it, we do it all the time, but it's still not right. Is it right for you to force you to do something on my behalf and not compensate you for it? That's not called free trade, that's what's called taxing the defenseless minority because you can get away with it. Then we can say, well, gee, what's affordable? Noel says, gee, is $50 affordable without putting you out of business? Wait a minute, why is it the government's business to decide how much you can afford to pay as a defenseless minority? And how much is that? No, instead of $50, maybe we can make the business license $5,000. And maybe we wouldn't put any businesses out of business, right? No, don't just shake your head, listen to
You're
me.
unrealistic.
Well,
You're
okay.
unrealistic. You're just blabbing right now.
yeah.
That's all you're
Yeah,
doing is
because
blabbing.
I
you're
think-
not, I'm not agreeing with you.
You're just blabbing.
All right,
That's
come
all
on,
you do
come
is
on.
blab. You don't come up with real
Come on,
solutions.
come on.
Come up with a
You
real solution.
You are reiterating what we are concerned about.
That's right.
So
That's blabbing. That's all
I
you do.
appreciate that, and I
That's
see
right.
you've got some notes there. If you'd share those with Al and Tanner, that
You know,
would be
it's
considered.
$100 fee in
But
Colorado Springs
we-
and $200 in Denver.
Noel,
That's
Yes, that's you
Noel.
blabbing.
you
no.
blabbing.
So thank you,
Hey,
Kurt,
by the way,
for
I thought
your
I had the floor
comments.
until he took it over from
Well,
me.
you brought my name up.
Okay,
I didn't ask it, I didn't
So-
ask it.
all right,
So you're cutting me
We're
off because I
moving
can't
on.
talk to defense.
yes, I
Okay.
am.
Let's
Quarter
let the,
after, we're moving on to the rest of the agenda.
We can't talk
Okay,
about defending the
we
businesses
are
here
doing
without
the
being,
development
put
proposal
down
of
by the
Woodland
government.
Station.
Thank you very much. Good work.
So, Tanner, you have passed out, this is the development of Woodland Station. Can you give us an update on the negotiating committee?
Well, yes. I'm going to present this drawing today. Forgive me, I don't often do this. I would,
No, sorry.
you,
Got it. That's it.
all right, I'll keep this really brief. And to be real clear here, this is not necessarily the DDA's plan, even though I am presenting this right now. This is something we've participated in. We have tried to assist with, we've had some input into. Well.
JPEG, so just use paint.
That's what I did.
You'd have to just zoom it in, that's why. It was zoomed out.
Technology's only good as its slowest bit.
Just right click on it. and
Yes,
just
it
paint.
needs to be, Sorry about that.
Well, while while this is coming up, can I make mention, since we're short of time, the cog car. I would like to say that we have got some extra rail and ties given to us by the cog station. And, Carl Anderson has very graciously offered to go down and pick them up so that we'll have extra sections of track and ties if we need to use them in this development for signs, for extra things, if we should get or cars or anything that we might need. We will have extra rails and ties, and they'll work on picking those up this week. So that's just a little update on the cog car. We got them on the screen. Tanner, go ahead.
Okay, this is just a draft. Changes are being made to this. This is not final, but it's far enough along at this point that the developers have agreed. It's ready for preliminary presentation in public. Okay, we've been working hard to try and get to this point so that the public would not be completely in the dark with what type of development we have been working on with them. So, you're probably all familiar with the property. Woodland Station, this is what's commonly referred to as the Lot 2 area. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor moving around there. And then down here is the southern part of the property. This hardware store, you can see the cursor. Anyway, the square-shaped building right here on the northeast portion of Woodland Station is what is being proposed for the first phase of development. This will be somewhere, what the developers are asking for is approximately a 40-foot tall structure in a rustic frame head type architecture. That would include a retail space, an entertainment space, and some couple of lodging units. That would be phase one. Phase two would be this pinkish area here that is an outdoor entertainment area. Following approximately 18 months after phase one. Phase three would be the building right next to that, which is an indoor entertainment area, along with a couple of lodging units above. Phase three might also include this event center area here. This retail space here. The amphitheater and mixed-use space down here. If phase three does not include those items, they would fall into a phase four. The developers are optimistic that a groundbreaking this fall is possible, and have asked that be the goal as we move through this process. And that's about it for this initial presentation. You do see the cog car here. They're proposing to rotate it to help maintain visibility into the development. Their architectural styles are fairly rustic, mountain, western, rugged textures that, from what we've seen so far, have very little concern at all. Looks like they have read and understand the design guidelines, familiar with the city's space that remains in this development is enhanced, not just landscape, but has some activities associated with it. And some examples that they have shared with us.
We just go up to view up there, cancel that. Extra large icon, there you go.
Activities such as the large chess set, trampolines, areas to gather and congregate, fire pits, things of that nature, so.
Would that first building be this picture of the farm kitchen building?
That's just one example.
An example of it, sure, okay.
Pitched roofs, timber accents, stone. So, these public amenities, I think they will be asking that
I would be there.
we fund for the city or some partnership or somehow, some.
I can have that.
Okay.
Okay, so, updates to follow, that, changes have already been requested by the developer, they've sent those directly to NES. We are expecting another draft here any day with a few updates, but this is getting pretty close to what they are going to propose. So, again, they were okay with our sharing this today, as long as it didn't, get too specific with businesses that they're proposing yet. Just the types of uses, the phasing, and so, are there any questions?
A question, the lodging that they're talking about putting over these businesses, is that like, weekly, monthly rental lodges for visitors, or is it home, residential lodging?
Those would be short term.
Short term, okay,
Airbnbs.
okay.
What'd you say?
Short term.
Short term.
Can't tell if this is on.
It's not.
Okay. Board, any questions to this?
Well, can I just make a comment?
Sure.
Would you thank them for stepping forward with this at this point? It looks like they're at least making an effort to kind of squelch a little bit of, so anyway, give them our thanks for stepping forward.
Ellen?
So in between the trees are those walkways, or is that a place that a car would drive? Where the trees coming down from the cog rail?
Trees
Is that just a walkway? Are those green things trees?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Pedestrian,
Pedestrian
yeah,
walkway.
not vehicular.
And so that looks like they won't be needing, or it has infrastructure and utilities and all that kind of stuff been discussed a little bit.
We started those discussions. In order to determine the requirements, we need a somewhat detailed, complete development plan.
So you need
I-
NES.
Yeah, this concept plan needs to be further defined, along with more specific information about the occupancy of the buildings, the expected number of trips generated by each use. Traffic engineer will be evaluating all of that, and Sally, correct me if I'm wrong on this, and applying their traffic codes to determine what the required access improvements would be. The city will review this, calculating, square footage of impervious surface and amount of drainage, type of drainage that might be required. And so this document, hopefully, ultimately will serve that purpose among some others.
And then that will lead to the pricing as well and the negotiations.
Right, as we enter into the negotiation of a disposition and development agreement, it will help us to have a good idea for what the requirements are going to be, what they will cost, and therefore we can negotiate with the developer as to how to achieve that.
This is a good start.
Any other questions, Jan?
No, I think this is a great start to, to where they're going with this. We have some idea, so thank you for doing that.
Okay, negotiating committee, you did good.
Sally's got a question.
Sally?
I was curious if this developer has their team put together for architect, engineers, development team, financial.
I haven't heard anything about engineers, but they do have architect.
So just to try to make groundbreaking by fall, that's a very ambitious schedule with all the steps that need to, which are typical development steps that need to take place. So if they don't have their team, we have not met with their team. Typically, the city meets with developers when they've prepared a concept plan and their team. So as soon as that can happen, we'd be very interested.
Tanner, in regards to that, you have talked to Michael Williams about coming out to meet with us, because we haven't, we want some hands-on, we want to shake hands and talk to people. Is he planning to do that relatively soon?
That I don't know. I received an email from him at one point saying that he would come out to meet with the board, but he seemed to expect that would be significantly later. And I have continued to encourage him to come sooner than later. I'll continue to encourage him.
And maybe on Sally's comments, that would be an encouragement to do sooner rather than later. Okay,
Anything else?
is there any other questions? Well, that went relatively quickly, I can't believe. Tanner?
I do have one other thing. I'm sorry, just checking my notes here. They have asked for the board's approval of this first building, and not a final approval per se. They don't have drawings, they don't have permits, they don't have, we're a ways from any sort of final approval, but a preliminary consensus, if you will, or more formal approval of what they're proposing, a 40-foot structure of a frame head type design to house those three different types of uses in that location, as shown. So,
Go ahead.
Certainly with that in mind, if they're looking for some kind of response from here, one of the questions, Tana, that I have, just looking at this casually, and I'm just gonna look at lot 2 only, because the rest of the lot there, the land mass, is different. But I would want to, at this point, question availability of parking, and also the access to, in particular, the third phase building, to have for delivery and of all sorts. It doesn't look like there's enough room there that's allocated to be able to service, we'll say, building 3. I guess you could come on the first and second building off of the street. If and if that street is to go straight through as the dotted line, black dotted line indicates, then there's gonna be a ramp. And that's gonna further impact that building number 3. So there's still some logistics and planning that Sally needs to work with their engineers and architect on.
This is just a conceptual layout, it's not.
And I think that's a good point, Al, and I think that has been brought up to them, that doesn't show yet.
It doesn't,
And they said that it
doesn't fit,
will.
so I'm not ready to even vote on anything.
Yeah, no. I would say personally, this is the direction that the board has always wanted this property to go. So I think that much of an approval we can give. My concerns is, they're concerned about obstructing the view with the rail car. Well, I'm concerned about obstructing the view with a 40-foot tower right at the entrance. I mean, that will cause more of a visual block than the railroad car does. So, you know, I would like them to really look at that, and maybe that would be better down here where the event center is at the end of Center Street, where you can see it from the highway, and it would be a draw into the place. That would be my thought and suggestion. Al?
The other question that I have, that I haven't really gotten a good feedback on is, it's my impression that a substantial portion of that lot is to be left as public access. Does that mean that the city of Woodland Park is gonna be looked at maintaining all of that?
To be determined.
Is that fair?
To be determined, it may not be, I don't know.
Yeah.
Currently,
This is just a
To be
start. This
determined,
is not
yeah.
a final thing, that this is how it's gonna be. It's
And
just,
those are questions.
yeah,
Therefore, I'm not ready to vote on it.
Tanner?
well, yeah, all these comments are really helpful for us because we need to give this feedback and direction to the developers so that they know which way to go with this. As far as the public area, that's included in the plan, there really isn't, I don't think there's a whole lot of it. If you look at that drawing, it's just the light tan area along the north part of the Lot 2 area, just south of Bergstrom, and the area that those purple pedestrian path lines are drawn down to the south between the trees. Let's see if I can. Right here. I don't know if you can see that cursor moving. So that area and this area. So, the idea being that the look and feel of Bergstrom Rest area would expand down into Woodland Station in just those areas, and include some activity amenities, perhaps some fire pits, benches, nicer landscaping.
There's certainly a lot of parking requirements. Even the American Disabilities Act will have an impact on what they can do.
Now, talking about, okay, go ahead, Ellen, and then Jerry, you had a question? Ellen?
I just wondered, have we received any information on their capability of financing the project?
Nothing specific yet.
Jerry?
I would very much like our approach to them to be of a good working relationship. Something that there's a lot of details that need to be ironed out. We're willing to iron them out and to work with them and encourage them that they will be well received. I think that it's time to have something happen there, and let's not be the roadblock. Let's help it get going. So please encourage them that they will get a positive response or working environment with us, if you would. That's my opinion.
No?
You were next.
I
Oh, okay,
already,
so Tanner, can maybe a suggestion is bring planning into the next meeting to iron out the big picture? It sounds like that hasn't been presented.
I think we're just not there yet.
We're not there yet?
No.
I mean,
we're not.
I think it's coming, I just think we're just not there yet, because we've got some other things too that we have told them that don't reflect on this plan.
So at this point, I think what I'm hearing is our next communication back to the developer will sound something like, well, there were some mixed comments about this, some ideas, some concerns. At this point, we're recommending come out here as soon as you can, meet with planning, meet with the board, bring financial information. Let's go look at the property together and make sure we're really on the same page and make some more progress that way.
Perfect.
Yeah,
And I
so-
think that that's the next step. I mean, I think this is good. And I would say, you know, I don't vote to approve this, but this conception is exactly what we're looking for, so you have our blessing. Let's continue.
Well, okay, and I didn't mean to, ask for any, real formal approval of this whole drawing. What they're asking for right now is to know whether that building on the northeast portion of the property is objectionable. If they need to steer into a different direction, they need to know it now, because that's phase one. That's the immediate focus for groundbreaking this fall, which they've recognized is very aggressive, not likely, but should be the target.
Like goals to shoot for.
Right, and so
If it means extended, you
they-
have to extend.
they have also proposed another option. If that 40-foot tall structure is objectionable, they have another thought on it, but that is not yet ready for public presentation. So if we end up in executive session today, we can discuss that and a couple of other parameters here that are more specific to the negotiation.
Tanner, I believe the 40-foot structure would need to get an exception to policy. Isn't the height, is 40-foot okay? I thought 36.
No, recall, this is an overlay district, and
And
so
so,
it has
no,
special
okay.
zoning that allows
Okay.
for a developer or landowner to propose the height. 35 feet is
Okay.
normally the maximum in the central business district. But again, you have the Woodland Station overlay, like a PUD, planned unit development.
We had a problem with the tower that the hardware store wanted to put in, that was objectionable.
You did, and that was because of the two buildings to the north.
Right.
You have a parking lot north of this.
Okay, I have one more thing to add. I mentioned my concerns about the 40-foot building. I don't know if anyone agrees with that or not, but that's my concern about it. I do think the short-term lodging above is an excellent idea. I know so many of my customers that come in, they come up and stay in those type of lodging accommodations and like it that way rather than a motel, so I think that's a good idea. And encourage even more of that. I have here, this is from the businesses in the shopping center next to Bergstrom Alley behind the hardware store, requesting that as this developed, if that could be included, the Bergstrom Alley, and an addition of 18 to 22 parking spaces behind the hardware store be addressed, and that alley be redone so that at least a fire truck could get down it, and that parking would be available for public parking, both for that shopping center and the new Woodland Station development. So that is a formal request that I have here from them, and the business owners have signed it. So that I would like to put out there to be included, at least in the conversations. Any comment from the board on that?
Who would pay for that?
I don't know. They're just requesting that and to go into talks about it. So, that's out there. Sally, you heard that, and I know that was part of the hardware store, and it kind of and I don't understand all of that, but if we could put that into the negotiation part, so it could be done at the same time, in the talks at least. Murph?
Maybe we should do the balloon on a string view blockage thing for, find out a relative center point. Because while there is only a parking lot, and I realize this, I might have a little bit of conflict here, but I kinda like the view from my front window.
That's a good point.
You know, it's, and a lot of my customers really like it too, so.
I wonder what the drop-off there is, though. I think we had a
You know,
topo map.
if it were put down towards, if the buildings were flipped, that might, because it does go down considerably there.
Right.
So, but if it doesn't, if it doesn't block everybody's view on the other side of the street for the peak view,
I'm with you.
I would,
No,
I'd
of course
be,
you don't wanna block that view.
I could care less. I mean,
Okay,
that's,
so you got that too?
but that view is I mean, it's not something I'd like to pay taxes on, but it is something that's kind of valuable to some of my customers.
On it already.
So,
No,
just a thought, Tanner, if they decide to come and visit, can we all meet over at Woodland Station and walk the grounds with them?
I don't see why not. It'd be a public meeting. We
Well,
didn't
that's
need to
fine.
notice
We
it.
could do it during this normal meeting if the weather permits, obviously, but
Okay.
maybe walk the grounds with them, because where are they from?
Tennessee.
Oh,
Tell them bring a bottle of recipe with them,
Jack
please.
Daniels.
Bottle of recipe.
okay. Do we need to go into executive session?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. And I
Okay.
think Murph, you bring up a great point of how
Member
far that way, the
instruction.
parking lot doesn't matter. It's the buildings across the street that matter, those businesses across the street. Because that's not very far at all from where the hardware store was, and we had that problem with the,
Okay.
and it
Yes,
was the
I think
businesses
that
across,
should
yeah.
definitely, anytime there's a height thing close to the
Sure.
highway, that should be there so that the
Right.
whole community will understand where that's at. Okay, I would like to request that we, table the grant discussion until the next meeting, cause we're running out of time
Yeah.
if we need to go into executive session. Do I need to do that with a motion or just ask that it be?
should we do general discussion so everybody
Well,
can
I'm
leave?
going
and
to,
then-
I'm
Yeah.
going to, but this is
Yeah.
next on the agenda, so I'm
Okay.
asking if we can just move that to the next meeting
So
and
moved.
discuss it then.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, so we'll move that to the next meeting. On to general discussion, okay, Nick, you got anything? Al,
Nothing additional.
Ellen,
No, I don't.
no?
Yes, went to a meeting with the county commissioners last week, that examined, CPACE. CPACE is a program that actually the county has to vote it in, I guess, the way it currently works, but they will you can do do improvements on your property, okay? And they will, it's not really a grant, you have to pay it back, but it's done through assessment and nothing down. The county, however, has to engage it. I'm gonna talk to Larry Lucas about, the CPACE program, see if this, home rule cities can vote it in, even if the county doesn't wanna be there. But the fact is, for instance, we put a charging station across the street in Bergson Park. I could put those in behind my business on a CPACE program and allow people to recharge and have some additional revenues for my business because food is not profitable
It's an
these days.
ATM machine.
Exactly,
Yeah.
basically.
ATM.
So at the end of the day, the CPACE program is something that's pretty cool, and it is not, it's initially, it is not taxpayer funded, it is, banks funded. As a matter of fact, I think Vectra is one of the, lenders on the program, I'm not sure, but I don't know. There was like a 3 mile long list of banks. But the reason why it's set up the way it is there's an assessment against the property once you do the work, okay? And that gets paid back through the property tax.
Just sit on it.
And therein lies the rub. The county has to administer it, and if there was some way for the city to get involved in it without the county's, blessing, that would require the city to administer it. But it's, put up solar it's all about, energy. They come in and do energy surveys and, the smallest project they did, I think, was around 100,000 and their largest one was over 7 million.
Wow,
And they do nonprofits as well, so that's one of the things to, keep in mind. Like I said, I'm gonna talk to Larry
well,
Lucas
we
about
need
it.
to keep, that needs to be brought into this development here, if any of that could
Well,
apply.
and that's,
In this development, that would help.
yeah, and then you also
Monies.
get energy credits and all this other cool stuff that, I have no clue how all that works, but.
Would you keep your hands on that
Um,
and as a negotiator, tie that in with these guys?
That's one of the plans, is,
Cool.
was going to look at that, alright? And lastly but not leastly, okay, on an earlier subject, I'm just gonna touch on, the cost of doing business is the cost of doing business. In fact, it's a very near and dear subject to my heart, as I have been going over it with some employees for the last month. There is no business in the world that can walk around doing $100 in business a day and paying $200 in the cost of doing business. Or am I missing something?
Don't think so.
All costs of business must be recouped. Every last penny of it. Because you can lose a penny a year for the next 50 years and lose your entire stockpile. That's how it is. And whenever we go with the cumulative effect of everything, and Darren has an out because it does say that it will be used in downtown Woodland Park, not the downtown district. How it was written. I have the, who did you write there? So at the end of the day, we thank our our elected officials for going forward and trying to help us, okay, at the same time, realize that, you think you're powerless. However, we do send delegates to the, the Colorado Municipal League and places like that to try and bring our voices forward. And we ask that, please do so. But also take into account that if each taxing entity and authority does not take into account what they are doing, what the cumulative effect, the federal government plus the state government plus the city government, and if you wanna come over and see some taxation, brother, I'll tell you what, I got a pile of tax receipts at the end of the day.
Point taken, it's just really hard to do business
I know.
in Woodland Park. For some reason,
For
it's
some reason.
25% more to do in Woodland Park than all up and down the pass. We need to determine why that is the case. So, that's good concern, we
I'm
need to
done.
stay ordered on that. I have a couple of things, we have the cog car book. This is, Dwayne Carter's daughter put this book together, and
It's
we,
nice.
it's a nice book on the cog car. It will be a fundraiser, we're selling the books for $35, it'll be a fundraiser for the maintenance of the car. And I would like, and Corey, if you could please put this in our minutes.
Yes.
That, and this is per the lady that said to Tanner, I would have paid to move the car to have my name on it. We didn't put it out for bid. It was a gift that just came from us, from Dwayne Carter, that offered to do this, which we open-armedly accepted. And the, idea of naming the car Myrna, I offered that to him. Would he like that for his generosity? And, obviously accepted, as well as a plaque for the car coming to town with the dates. And, there's been a nice brass plaque proposed for that has Myrna Dwayne in the car when it came and, where it was set, so there's a little commemorative there too. And that came from our offer for his generosity. Just so the board knows that, and it is a public record.
So Mary Jo, we can come, to the Callahan, to pick up our copies?
Yes, please do, and Jan has bought the first copy, here's her check. So we'll get that to Val and make it out to Mountain Arts Council. Any donation or any, purchase of the books, because that is our nonprofit that we're going through so that it will be a tax deduction. Okay? I guess can't think of anything else, that's all I have. Corey, you got anything? Jan?
I do. We had a community placemaking meeting last Wednesday. My personal opinion was that it was a huge success because from Main Street, there were several of us that went out to invite the businesses to participate in this, that their input was necessary. And I followed up the ones that I visited with a phone call. And I got such positive reaction from that. They were all happy to be included. They were happy that they were being heard. And I made it a point that, we can't do everything. The city can't do everything, but we're listening. And if we can do that, that works great. But I thought, even with the weather, I thought we had a good turnout. And Sally, if you wanna tag on to that, but I was really pleased with that, and I hope we do more of that.
Yeah, it was a great turnout, lots of energy in the room.
Oh, absolutely.
And we have a placemaking partners team that will be getting together this month on the 18th. And Bud will have a summary, and so we'll look at our priorities and see how we can align them with the input we receive.
She said Bud because he's got a real weird last name, and I don't think any of us know how to say it. I don't.
Well,
Tim
that's
Chisholm.
good.
Tim Chisholm, I think is how you say it.
Good try, good try.
Good. I'm glad it was a success.
It really was.
Is that all, Jan?
Yes,
Jerry?
sorry.
Well, I'm slightly optimistic that this year looks a little bit better for my business coming around the first corner. So, I just wanted to pass that on. And I think that the Moose's Loose sale was well attended this year, and saw lots of smiling faces. My biggest complaint about it is that Tanner offers everything in his store discounted, so then people come into my store and expect everything to be discounted.
There he is, punching.
But other than that, it was really good. That's all.
Tackle him.
It was good. It certainly has saved our February. Thank you, Tanner.
No, thanks. I wanted to mention that Moose's Loose has come to a conclusion. It was our 20th Moose's Loose sales event, and I consider it a success. I hope it was for the other businesses as well. I've heard quite a few good things. Still compiling the data. We have a lot of Moose passes turned in, very many. Many poker run sheets turned in. We have a lot of prizes that have been donated, and we're about to start giving those away, including a $500 shopping spree to one lucky winner who will have those Moose bucks to come spend in the downtown. So as a reminder to businesses in downtown and those who participated, those who may see those Moose bucks, just treat them as cash, bring them to me, and at Tweeds, we will redeem them for cash, so.
Is there a 3%
Less
surcharge
per
on those?
Yeah, think about keeping a little fee there.
That's better.
Anyway, I do want to thank all the participating businesses, many customers who showed up, and the sponsors this year: UC Health, Keller Williams, Client's Choice Realty, Vectra Bank, Skyridge Lending, and Century Casino for their support. So thank you all very, very much for that, helping to accomplish some good things. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that, without putting any publicity on the issue, there is a local resident making some claims about us, some of us by name, some of our businesses, and this board right now. Some things that are just factually untrue, just lies. And I don't know if the board has seen what it is I'm talking about, if there's any care to include our attorney in what's being claimed or not. I have taken no action and don't really care to deal with this individual in any way,
Done it
shape,
a
or
long
form,
time
but there are things about the DDA and a number of us individually and businesses that are being said that are false. Just wanna make sure that that's been brought to the board's attention, so if there's any concern or direction there, that it can be addressed.
And that is a concern, but I think considering the source, that would be futile, and even attempting it and even acknowledging, I think would be futile as well. That's my personal opinion.
You know, he's called us as a whole a bunch of child molesters, and he's
I know.
actively sought the boycott of our businesses. And there's a whole lot of bad, slanderous stuff coming out of this individual's mouth.
Well, I guess we'll just have to hope that no one listens to it and makes their own decision.
Really?
That's it for me.
Yeah. audience participation, Debbie?
Several things. So you all talked about, the difficulty of doing business. We're offering a lunch and learn this Thursday, and it's being taught on a business generation model canvas. Murph, I believe you know the instructor, Corey Stinky, is, actually gonna be teaching this for us. I know one of the downtown businesses, Lynn Jones, has, adopted it a couple of years ago, and it has made a remarkable difference for her. It's a fluid, model, so that daily you can change your business model of how you're looking at where your customers are coming from, how you're doing business. So that's 11:30 Thursday, at the Cultural Center. Call us and get signed up for that. We also have a blue book that is available online, or you can stop by the chamber and pick it up. It's our first attempt at doing a blue book in regards to the proposed charter amendments. There are 11 of them on the ballot, and we held a town hall about it, very well received, with what we're doing, and we're hoping to offset any type of voter fatigue when, voters get their ballots, so that they'll take that, have it alongside, and they'll be educated as they're voting on the proposed amendments. We have a candidates forum coming up here on March 11th. The candidates will draw their numbers at 5:15. It'll begin at 5:30. It will be streamed live, and it will be here in, council chambers as well. And then on Friday, March 20th, we have our annual dinner, and our award winners will be, given their awards that evening. So there's a lot on our plate for this month, and we're excited.
Great, thank you, Debbie. Anyone else? Sally, do you have anything
No, ma'am.
to say? Okay, this side, Pat?
I don't
anybody?
mean to be snarky, but you have the only microphone system in the United States that muffles sound. You can't hear anything. Well, I mean, you can, but
This is
From
the
these?
city's equipment, not ours.
From these, all of us?
well, you're not using, you're not, speaking into them, just leave them there.
Well, that one wasn't on, but these, you can't hear from
Not
these
that
either?
well.
You have to put them up to your face to catch the
Okay.
sound here.
Then we'll do that next time.
That's not on?
Testing, testing.
Okay, is that better?
No,
Can you hear now?
no. So they're on, but they're not on.
Especially when your face is turned, like if I were talking to you like this.
Okay, well, we'll do a test check on that then.
We have an expert.
New equipment, so we'll have to get it figured out, I guess. Okay, well, we will go into executive session now. If we'll take a 5-minute break if anybody needs to out of their nose. All right,
Anybody need coffee?
okay. I'm going to read this as everyone leave for the purpose, we go into adjourn to executive session for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters involving development projects for which the